Looking at the pros and cons of Washington Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels playing in preseason game 1 against the New York Jets, there's only one con, but man, is it a doozy. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Commanders fans, and welcome into today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, credentialed member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. I'm here with you every Monday through Friday. Greatly appreciate you coming through today. Everydayers, I greatly appreciate you coming through every single day. This is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, and if you haven't already, you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode. And on today's episode, we're going to share a little bit more practice observations. I had some other notes that I wanted to add in that I wasn't able to before we took the break on Monday from practice. So we're going to drop that here today on this episode. We're also going to go over our depth chart projections for the first Washington Commanders depth chart of the preseason. But first, we're going to start with the pros and the cons of quarterback Jayden Daniels playing against the New York Jets. If you want to discuss that or anything in this episode or anything else Washington Commanders related, or if you've got questions, you can send them directly to me by texting me by becoming a Locked On Commanders Insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders, and you can text me today. You can text me. I'm going to text you. I'm going to send you updates, information, exclusive content, bonus content. Also going to send you live text from games, practices, press conferences, all kinds of fun stuff. No app to download, no hashtags to worry about. Simply text messages from me and you with my eyes on the ground for you at Washington Commanders training camp and preseason and all through the regular season. Again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get started today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting the way we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every single day. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Jayden Daniels is going to play against the New York Jets. Head coach Dan Quinn has already said that, didn't even hesitate. Sounds like it was pretty much a foregone conclusion. Why wouldn't the rookie quarterback play in the preseason and get as much experience as he possibly can? And I think that's really what this is going to kind of boil down to for the Washington Commanders. Putting Jayden Daniels out there is getting that experience. But of course, everything boils down to risk versus reward. And then it is the reward worth the potential risk that you're risking, right, by putting a guy out there in this context. So let's look at the risk versus the reward, and let's kind of break this down, because really it's not actually all that difficult to break down. It's very simplistic. The risk, injury. That's the only one. That's the only risk in this entire venture is injury. But man, is that a big, big risk, because the bottom line is you have an athletic quarterback. You've got an offensive line that is at best unproven, at worst suspect, right? And you've also got a quarterback who's athletic and who likes to take chances, and he gets asked very constantly about whether or not he's going to slide, whether or not he's going to take hits and all those things. He told us as much on Sunday at his post-practice press conference that the coaches have talked to him about being smart, that he knows he needs to be smart. I'm sure other people have talked to him about it, being smart. I'm sure his agent has talked to him about it. I'm sure his mother has talked to him about it. I'm sure his father has talked to him about it. And I think everybody at the end of the day wants Jayden Daniels to go out there and be Jayden Daniels, right? Be who you are. But be a smart version of who you are. And I don't mean to say that like normal Jayden Daniels is dumb. That's not at all what I'm saying. But sometimes we can let our competitive nature get the best of us. And he said it himself. He knows he's got to live to play another down. Well, living to play another down is a very common quarterback mantra that usually applies to throwing the football away or throwing it to the ground instead of putting in a risk, instead of maybe throwing the ball into double coverage, or doing something similar that's going to take the ball out of your hands, out of your offense's hands, and put it into the hands of your opponent. Well, in this case, live to play another down also means protect your body. Don't take unnecessary hits. Don't take too heavy of a hit when you don't need to take one, right? If it's 3rd and 2 and you pick up 5 yards and you're like, man, I could pick up 7 yards if I just take this hit from this strong safety that's barreling down on me. Okay, don't take that hit, bro. Like, we can get those other 2 yards. And it's hard to do that with a competitor, especially one as competitive as Jayden has been and one as talented as he is, because what do we always say? This is a game of inches, right? And there's a situation later on down the line where you might say, man, if we had those 2 more yards right now, we'd be sitting really pretty. But, that's kind of the thing that the quarterback has got to go ahead and do. So while that's really the only con here, it is a very, very big con on the pro and con list for Jayden Daniels playing against the New York Jets. There's another con that some people have mentioned about him playing, and that is getting out there against NFL caliber defenses too soon and what he could potentially do to his confidence. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't view his confidence getting shaken as a con, because what I will tell you right now is if a quarterback in the NFL can go out there and have one bad preseason game and just completely lose his confidence to the point where he can no longer be your franchise quarterback, that dude was never your franchise quarterback in the first place. So I am not worried about his confidence in week one. In fact, given the amount of confidence we've seen from Jayden, given the confidence that this coaching staff has, given the experience that this coaching staff has, there's actually a lot that you could build off of if he does struggle a little bit. It'll actually give you the opportunity, because I don't think anybody's questioning when Jayden talks about being, he doesn't really talk about being humble. He just is humble in the way that he speaks about. He's not the starter. He's not a star quarterback. And he was asked, are you ready to take the starting reins? And he said, no, I've still got a lot to learn. I've got a lot of areas I want to improve in still. He believes that. Like that's not lip service. That's something that I feel like he truly believes. And that's something that's very authentic coming from him. But having some struggles is also another opportunity for you to grow and take lessons from those struggles. So I'm not really concerned about a lack of confidence, because on top of it, like Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury are not going to leave Jayden Daniels in there to throw 4 interceptions. Like if he goes out there for one drive, throws a pick, goes out there for 2 drives, throws a pick, they're not going to put him in for a third series. I promise you that. So Jayden Daniels is not going to come out of here having 3-4 interceptions or fumbles or whatever. You know what I mean? So I'm not worried about the confidence aspect of. Now, what's the reward of making him play or having him play, allowing him to play? He said he's a competitor. He always wants to play ball. So what are the rewards? Well, of course, there's the experience, right? This is his first opportunity to live NFL speed football. Yeah, he's been getting rushed by John Allen and Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong and Frankie Louvu and all those guys, but they can't hit him. And he knows they can't hit him. The risk or the ante goes up a little bit when you know that the guy who's running at you can also hit you, right? And when it's a guy who's in a Jets uniform that doesn't care about you, that doesn't care that you're in there every morning before everybody else, that doesn't care that you've been doing really well in training camp. In fact, he actually would really be happy if he can be part of the reason why people start saying, well, maybe all that good stuff we said in training camp wasn't all that good. He would be happy to be that guy, because that's going to put his name on a little bit as well, especially if Jayden doesn't start, but he goes in there against, say, a second team defense. You're going to have second team defense. What does second team defense have? Guys who are fighting for starting spots, guys who are fighting for roster spots. Those guys would love to be the one who's all over NFL Network, all over SportsCenter, all over the Locked On Commanders podcast, being talked about as the dude that exposed that Jayden Daniels, all the hype we've been pumping up about him in training camp, is fake. So it's very valuable experience. Game pressure, again, he's been making a lot of really smart decisions. He's been putting the ball in really good places. I've been impressed with it. Dan Quinn said he was impressed with it. Can he do it when the bullets are live, so to speak? The wins and losses don't count, but the bullets are live. And then if he does well, the confidence there matters. And this is where confidence matters, right? Preseason is very similar to not bowl games, all-star games, like the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, even in the NFL scouting combine, right? If you see a receiver or you see a quarterback not connect with a receiver in the scouting combine, pretty much everybody's going to say to you, that's not a big deal. What we're looking for is, was the ball clean? The ball get where he wanted it to go? And where the mechanics right? That's all we're really worried about. But if he does connect, it's like, man, this dude connect with the receiver. He barely knows. Look at how well he's able to adjust to these guys. So the positives get weighed much heavier than the negatives do in this type of a situation, because the whole point of the preseason is to train, to get better, and to improve. So if you go into an exercise saying, look, we're looking for ways where we can improve, and then you come out and say, man, look at all these areas we can improve. What's wrong with you guys? That defeats the purpose, right? If you go into an exercise, we're saying we're coming in here looking for areas to improve in, and then you come out and say, guys, look at all these areas you're already good at. We don't even have that many to improve on. That's where your confidence just starts to grow a little bit more. So the rewards are very high. The risk is the highest. Obviously, Dan Quinn and his coaching staff believe that the risk is worth the reward. Plenty of conversations are going to be had, I assure you, about playing smart. I do expect Jayden Daniels to deliver on playing intelligent football, whether he starts, whether it's with the second team, whether it's with the third team, which is not going to be with the third team. I'm going to tell you which team Jayden Daniels is going to be playing with and why I think that he's not going to be the starting quarterback against the New York Jets in Washington Commanders preseason game number 1. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I love sports. You love sports. We all love sports, and that's why we're here in today's episode of Locked On Commanders, brought to you by FanDuel. But as all the major sports playoff series and seasons come to an end, Major League Baseball is left standing alone for a couple of months with no postseason, no playoff, no real playoff implications, right? So while the sports aren't sporting the way that we want them to, FanDuel is here to let you and me get back into the sports whenever we want. Because all we got to do is open up the sportsbook, the FanDuel Sportsbook app, dream up any bet we want for any competitive athletic event going on at the time, and boom, we're right back in the competition. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every single day. Everyone has something for them every day, all summer long. New customers right now, you're getting $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. And Tuesday coming up is Dinger Tuesday, where you place a pre-live straight up to hit a home run wager on any August 6th Major League Baseball game, and you will get bonus bets for every home run hit by both teams in that game. So head over to FanDuel.com, start making those your summer with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Jayden Daniels is going to play against the New York Jets. I don't think he's going to start against the New York Jets. I'm going to tell you why here in just a moment. Thanks for making Locked On Commanders your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get your daily insight on the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. So the Washington Commanders' first depth chart of the preseason is due to drop on Tuesday. This episode is going to drop Monday night into Tuesday. So I'm going to go ahead like we do around roster cut times and all that stuff. And we're going to drop our depth chart projection. And we're going to start with the offensive side of things. And we just talked about Jayden Daniels playing against the New York Jets, the pros and the cons to him doing so. Well, while he's going to play, I don't believe he's going to start. And that might be a little bit weird because coming into this recording, Jayden Daniels has gotten all of the first team reps for 3 straight practices. So he's probably going to get all of the first team reps on Tuesday's practice as well, going into Thursday against the New York Jets. He might even get all the first team reps against the New York Jets. Although I do feel like Dan Quinn's probably going to get Marcus Mariota some first team reps against the New York Jets because, again, that level of competition. And look, knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but just in case you need to lean on Marcus Mariota during the season, you want him to have some more experience. So I don't think we're done seeing Marcus Mariota get first team reps, whether it happens Tuesday, Thursday, or at some other point. But I think that looking at the trend of the way that this Washington Commanders staff has really handled Marcus Mariota and Jayden Daniels, and Dan Quinn has said it himself, right? Crawl, walk, run. This is Jayden Daniels' first NFL game. So how do you crawl an NFL game? When you crawl an NFL game by going into the planning, going into the preparation, the warm-ups, the pregame huddle, the locker room, putting on the pads and the real uniform for the first time, running onto the field, hearing the fans, the introductions, the national anthem, the coin toss, all that stuff. You do that by knowing you're not about to go on the field and play in a competition, right? Marcus Mariota is going to lead the team on the field. So you look at the trend, and I just feel like that's probably what we're going to follow coming into this. So I'm going to go ahead and put Marcus Mariota at the top of the original depth chart coming out this preseason. Jayden Daniels, quarterback number 2. Jeff Driscoll is going to be quarterback 3. Sam Hartman is going to be quarterback number 4. We're not going to talk about every single name on the Commanders roster right now because it's a very long roster, but we will get to some of the key names here. Looking at the offensive line, I think your starting right tackle is Andrew Wiley. Behind him is Trent Scott and then Alex Akinbulu. Andrew Wiley's been dealing with tightness in training camp, so whether or not he plays in the preseason game is obviously a little bit up in the air. If it's not him, then it should be Trent Scott if he's healthy enough to go. Alex Akinbulu got injured at the practice on Sunday, had to actually be carted off the field. I was very concerned about his long-term diagnosis, but he tweeted out on Monday a GIF of a guy dodging bullets. So I think that that's an unofficial report, but it seems like it definitely wasn't as bad as it could have been. Starting right guard's going to be Sam Cosmi. No surprises there. Behind him, I've got Julian Good-Jones and Mason Brooks. Personally, I like Mason Brooks more, but right now, just looking at reps, I think Julian Good-Jones is probably going to be ahead of him. Center is Tyler Biadasz. The backup there is Ricky Stromberg. Left guard is Nick Allegretti. Michael Dieters behind him, followed by Chris Paul and Braden Daniels. Left tackle, Brandon Coleman. Cornelius Lucas behind him. And look, when you look at the offensive line, we've seen Michael Dieter take snaps. We've seen Chris Paul get in there with the second team. Braden Daniels has also played at tackle. So take the depth chart with a grain of salt. Guys are still going to work around, right? Mason Brooks was playing at tackle as well on Sunday at the latest, right? So don't get too glued into where they're listed. They're going to kind of bounce around a little bit. Maybe not in the preseason game, but just understand that this staff is looking at guys everywhere. Running back room. National media might be a little bit surprised by this, but Brian Robinson Jr., as far as I'm concerned, as far as everybody else that I know who's been on ground is concerned, he's RB1. I'm going to be very surprised if Austin Ekeler comes into this thing listed as RB1. And if he does, I might kind of look at it as a little bit of a veteran tip of the cap, right? It was like, hey, you're the veteran, so we'll put you first. But either way, Brian Robinson Jr., number 1, Austin Ekeler's 2. I've got Jeremy McNichols at number 3, Chris Rodriguez Jr. 4th, followed by Michael Wiley and Austin Jones. Wide receivers, I've got 2 groups here. So yes, you can have a third receiver group and have your slot starter. I didn't go that route, but I do have 2 receiver groups here. On one end, you got Terry McLaurin, Luke McCaffrey, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Byron Pringle. And then the other end is led by Jahan Dotson, De'Ami Brown, and Jamison Crowder. And I really feel like those 7 receivers are kind of fighting for these 6 roster spots that right now I've kind of got in my head for the active roster when this whole thing starts. You've also got guys like Bryson Tremaine, who's had a strong camp, Kaz Allen, who certainly has some potential. Mitchell Tinsley has flashed here and there as well. Tight ends, Zach Ertz, I'm going to have at number 1. I am going to have John Bates second. Ben Sinnett's going to be third, followed by Cole Turner as the 4th tight end on the initial depth chart. Looking over at the defensive side of things, defensive end, you've got one side, Dorrance Armstrong Jr. as the starter. The other side, Cleveland Farrell. They're going to be backed up by Dante Fowler Jr., Andre Jones Jr., KJ Henry, Jalen Harris, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Now, looking at this, you kind of say, well, Andre Jones Jr. is ahead of KJ Henry, but honestly, I think KJ Henry probably gets on the field faster. It's just kind of the quote-unquote side of the ball that he's listed on. He'll be listed third while Andre Jones is listed second. And again, KJ Henry might actually get listed second behind Cleveland Farrell, but Andre Jones is the more Farrell-like defensive end, so I put him in with Cleveland there in that stable. Defense tackles, obviously, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne are your top 2. Johnny Newton, if they decide to go ahead and roll him out to the, for that game, I mean, he's going to be on the depth chart, but whether or not he actually plays, we'll see, obviously. But he's in there. Fedarian Mathis also in there. And then I've got John Ridgeway and Benning Potoa'e behind them, along with some of the other guys that are probably more likely practice squad players, such as Taylor Stallworth, the new defense tackle that was brought in here on Sunday. Linebackers, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Luvu, obviously leading it off. Jamin Davis and Jordan McGee are kind of the second 2. Jamin Davis has been getting first-team reps in 3 linebacker sets, but when he's on the defensive end, or when he's listed, when he's lined up on the defense as a defensive end, then it's Jordan McGee, or when Jamin is an outside linebacker, edge rusher, whatever you want to call it. Jordan McGee certainly after that. Behind those guys, I've got Anthony Pittman. If you're on YouTube, I've got Jordan McGee listed twice because I just really like him. Actually, I've got Anthony Pittman listed twice as well. So a little bit of a clerical error there. But Bo Bauer is also in there. Michael Walker is actually listed by the team as an outside linebacker. I just looped him in here with the off-ball linebackers just to save space. And then Keandre Jones behind them. Corners, right now I've got Benjamin St-Juste and Emmanuel Forbes as 1 and 2. Now, Michael Davis has started getting more first-team reps, so we'll see how that kind of influences things. Benjamin St-Juste has been the guy that's coming off, though, and Michael Davis is coming on. So right now, those are your top 3 guys. I've got Treat Castro Fields listed in there. Coming up next, followed by James Pierre and Chigozie Anuzium, AJ Woods, and Nick Whiteside filling in there. Nickelback, you've got Mike Sainer still, followed by Noah Igbenogany and Caillou Blue Kelly. Your free safeties are Quan Martin, Percy Butler, Derek Forrest, and Ben Nickel. Strong safeties, Jeremy Chin, Tyler Owens, Jeremy Reeves, and Dominique Hampton. Special teams, your kickers. Right now, I'm giving the lead to Ramiz Ahmed in the kicker battle. Riley Patterson coming in second. Your punter is Tress Way, obviously. Your long snapper is Tyler Ott. Returners, I've got a little bit of a caveat here, right? Punt returners, I think Jamison Crowder's your top guy. I think Kaz Allen's probably going to be listed second. I think Emmanuel Forbes is going to be listed third because they're really trying to make this Emmanuel Forbes punt returner thing a reality. I think Mike Sainer still needs to be in there. Olamide Zaccheaus, Jahan Dotson, I don't think is actually going to return punts, but he has been back there in training, so maybe they put him on the depth chart. I don't know how deep they're going to go with punt returners. They may only go 2 guys, they may go 3 guys, but I wanted to list all the guys I've seen fielding punts. As far as kick returners, I basically went the same list because honestly, guys, I don't know what they're going to do when it comes to the kick returner. There's a lot of different options. You're going to see it as much as I'm going to see it. We've been watching it practice. They've got so many different combinations. There's really no way to say like this is the top guy right now for the kick return game. So that's our initial depth chart here. Projection for the preseason. That thing will drop, or we are expecting it to drop on Tuesday. So we'll see how close we were, how close or how far away we were. But either way, we will have action coming up this week on Saturday. Of course, joint practices coming up on Thursday. Speaking of practices, I got some other notes from Sunday and just throughout training camp that I want to share with you guys that we haven't talked about as much. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders, and this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day. Maybe you meditate every day. Maybe you do yoga every day, or maybe it's therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, friends needing you here, there, everywhere, and more, it is easy to let your priorities slip. Even when you know what makes you happy, it's hard to make time for it. It's just something that we all do, to be quite honest with you. Sometimes we even feel selfish for doing things that are only for us, that make us feel better. But talking to someone who can see the big picture of your life without bias can help you put those things in perspective. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Simply fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you need to change at any time, you can do so for no additional charge. So never skip therapy day again with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, I got a few more practice notes that I haven't been able to fit into other episodes, so I want to go ahead and cover them here. There's an interesting triple option screen type play that we saw installed at Washington Commanders training camp. I can't diagram it here because obviously that would give potential opponents the opportunity to also know it as well, and the team would get really, really mad at me for doing so. But I'll just tell you right now, guys, it's a lot of fun. It's one of these kind of triple option type plays, and I don't know if that's really the best way to describe it, but that's just kind of the way my layman's football mind is going to describe it, where you really just have the opportunity to use Jayden Daniels' brain power, right? And that's something that Marcus Mariota also talked about, is how the quarterback position is just kind of all up in the head. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of things that go on with it. There's a lot of movement, a lot of left movement, right movement. You know, you got to obviously watch the quarterback when it's Jayden Daniels or Marcus Mariota for that matter. And it really makes the defense kind of choose where you want to go. And once the defense chooses where they want to go, you just go where they didn't go. And it's a really cool play. I've seen a lot of interesting things installed by Cliff Kingsbury so far that have been really fun. Now, if you go back to an episode from about this time last year, you're going to hear me say the same thing about Eric Bieniemy. And a lot of those things we did not see in the regular season. So, you know, we'll see what's fun in preseason and training camp, and we'll see what's fun in the regular season. But I certainly hope you guys get to see more of that unveiled in the regular season. Wide receiver Luke McCaffrey is someone that we haven't talked about as much because he hasn't had like any big touchdown plays or anything like that. But listen, Luke McCaffrey has been drawing a lot of penalty flags. This is a dude that knows how to fight through contact. He knows how to run. He's not afraid of it. As far as his route running is concerned, like I can't really tell you how much of a technician he is as a route runner in like team drills and stuff, because the dude's just getting mugged all the time. I mean, DBs are just all over this dude, and he's drawing a lot of flags from those refs that are there at practice. Again, I don't know if they would throw all of those in a game scenario, but the really impressive things, we talked about this a little bit in some of the one-on-ones we talked about on Sunday and Friday before that, is he's getting free of the contact, and he's still making catches for his quarterback. So Luke McCaffrey as a wide receiver is really intriguing. And, you know, I don't think he's going to be this like year one stud. I don't think I'm going to be like telling anybody to draft him in your fantasy leagues or anything like that. But I think that the kid definitely has potential. This team, you know, there was a lot of talk about, oh, well, Adam just drafted him because he knows him and he knows the family. No, this kid's got talent, guys. Bryson Tremaine also continues to have a really strong training camp. He's in his second year, little known guy, came out of Stanford, you know, came along with Tavita Pritchard. And I can't do anything but believe that Tavita Pritchard had a big hand in bringing him in. But he continues to have a really strong training camp. I had a touchdown catch on Sunday on a fade route over Benjamin St-Juste. And look, that's a starting cornerback in the National Football League, right? Now, he's maybe not the greatest starting cornerback in the National Football League, right? But he's still a starting cornerback in the National Football League. It's Bryson Tremaine going up and mossing him. Very impressive. So really happy for that young fella. We had him on the show once officially. I've talked to him a couple times on the side as well. Really happy for him. And then Mike Sainristil. The more you see Mike Sainristil, hopefully you guys saw that interview of him. I'll be looping all these interviews that we have into some special episodes towards the end of the preseason. I've got that planned. So if you're not catching all the player and coach interviews that we're doing on the show, don't sweat it. You'll have another opportunity to catch those. And of course, the episodes, as you know, are always available in libraries and YouTube and all that stuff. But Mike Sanders still very impressive when you talk to him, very impressive when you watch him. I mean, the dude is just around the ball. Like he's just, and honestly, it reminds me a lot of watching Quan Martin's tape in Illinois. And something that I really came away with that I liked about Quan Martin in Illinois was when he was a free safety. Liked him as a slot defender as well. But I always noticed that as a free safety, the dude is always around the ball. Well, Mike Sanders still as a slot corner is always around the ball. There was a specific play in 11s where he starts on the left side of the defense formation in the slot. It's a run play that goes to the left side of the offense, to the right side of the defense. And I think it was B-Rob. Doesn't matter who the running back was. Whoever was kind of, quote unquote, got free. Again, they're not actually tackling and taking to the ground there. But Mike Sanders still ends up right where the play is going to end, if it's actually going to end. So this dude, I mean, he's just quick, fast, and just has a nose for the ball, man. And he's just all over the place. So Mike Sanders still, something that Coach Quinn really isolated as showing up on tape, even though he hasn't necessarily flashed on the practice field as far as coming up like a highlight reel interception, things like that so far. His consistency and his really, the best way I can explain is almost professionalism as a rookie, really shining through on the practice field. And then, Dan Quinn says in the meeting rooms and everything else as well, where we are not. So Mike Sanders still another player that is continuing to impress as we get deeper into training camp. We've got practice tomorrow, so come back for that episode. We will talk about more news and notes from our final Washington Commanders practice before joint practice. After tomorrow, the next one's Thursday. It's against the New York Jets. Wednesday, I'm driving up to Jersey. So make sure you come back tomorrow for our next episode. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, all you got to do is reach out and text me. joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. No apps, no hashtags, no downloads. Then you can text me your questions, your comments, and whatever else you decide to text me. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen today. Now go listen to the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast and get your daily insight to the best fantasy football draft strategies so you can win your league. And of course, as always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day, everydayers. Thanks for coming through like you always do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you next time right back here for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.